The Dragon Lord Legacy, Chapter 5, Part 2. A sigh of relief washed through everyone, and with it came so many questions, though one was important than all the rest.
Wait, that's it?
Blurted out Smolder. Everyone turned to her, Ember and Spike separating. She had a crossed look upon her, though somewhat timidly shrunk at their eyes.
No harsh or difficult way of trying to gain his memories back? No days or weeks of trying to restore it all? Not even an epic scream or cheer? He endured this way worse before, what gives?
That actually did cross the mind of the elders.
That surprisingly makes sense, and no sense at all,
Stated Cynthia. She turned to her mate.
Why was there no feedback?
Elianza herself seemed unsure, though she tried her best to answer.
My abilities were freely used upon this time for his mind, and it didn't resist it. During his trials, he kept trying to push me out, while I forced my way back in. Here, his mind was open, free, and I could easily influence any gaps or blocks that he had. The few memories I put back in were from what I had seen before, but I can also assume that having him, Ember, here to help you was what made it easier.
Her tone lowered, as did her head. She looked down at Spike, sadness filling her features.
I apologize, Spike, for everything that has befallen you.
She swallowed, trying her best not to show her emotions.
I hope that you could forgive me. Us.
Exclaimed the other two elders.
For what has befallen you. I know you wish to go back home now, though I hope that we had tried our best to make it feel like that you belonged here.
Spike cocked his head. Sure, his memories were back. He remembered the trials, the pain, the near destruction of his mind, and the fact that he nearly lost his friends and family. Yet, from that mess, he gained more family. Two mothers who took him in while under a coma. Ember had gained a horde, and it would be part of his as well. He possibly also had a father-like influence from Torch. Possibly, he was still waiting for that one to fall through, though. He noticed that Cynthia also seemed hopeful as well, maybe silently praying that everything they had done to him, as well for him, would make him want to keep them as his family too.
Everything that you have done after the trials,
he began, slowly but through confidence,
was to keep me alive. Whether out of guilt or your sake, you kept me safe and warm. You filled my mind with your lives, your love, and more. You both didn't know that I had really lost my memories, but you did your best to hopefully keep me sane.
He gave a smile towards them both.
I know that you think I will forsake what you have done, but I won't. Despite what anyone else may think, you still are my mothers.
Sheer relief and joy filled the two females. Tears formed at the tear ducts at their son's words. He could see their forms relaxing and love radiating from them at his words.
Thank you. Thank you, Spike. Our son.
He kept his warm smile towards his mothers, though Ember broke through their moments.
Are you gonna respond to Twilight?
She swallowed. Small amounts of worry creeped into her voice.
I don't think that she could wait any longer.
He looked down at the scroll and claw before nodding.
I will, though she will be begging for you for clearance to arrive here. I think it would be better if we go to Equestria to see them.
We?
She asked, and he nodded.
We all should go.
He motioned to a wave of everyone in the cave.
I think it would be a great way to introduce every pony to everyone here. And not only that, but maybe seeing the elders could prove a benefit for the future of both nations. The princesses could meet the elders of the Dragonlands and establish a peaceful ruling.
His voice was filled with excitement, however, he quickly noticed worried looks upon everyone's faces. His mood then dropped.
What?
Spike.
Ember hadn't let go of his claws, though she held them firmly as she spoke.
A lot has changed in the time that you were in a coma. You might not know, but almost a year has passed since you were awake.
He knew he was in a coma. He knew time had passed, but it still somewhat came to a small shock that a year had passed. A lot could happen in a year.
Did anything happen to Equestria?
He asked. His early happier emotions began to drain from him.
As Far as we can tell, Twilight has been trying to steady the relationships between us and the ponies,
Ember stated.
I have been trying my best to keep them peaceful, but if you hadn't woken up anytime soon, the princesses themselves would have forced their way to us.
She then looked up at her father.
We, me and Father, have been seeing ponies patrolling our borders, setting up camps and outposts, not to mention that we have had infiltrators nearby.
Normally we would deal with the issues the way dragons do, Torch said a bit gruffly, hating to sound weak. But the fact that the ponies have the aid of the Chaos Chimera and those shifting bugs is getting difficult to be sure how close we are to a fight or a war. Spike had never known that he was that important to the ponies. I mean, he knew that he played his part with his friends. It was the official legal son of Princess Celestia and hero to the Crystal Empire. That was there, but a whole nation nearly going into a war just for him? Base camps, infiltration, shifting... Wait, bugs?
Did you say shifting bugs? As in changelings?
He asked. Ember added in quickly.
According to Twilight, some months ago they became allies with the changelings after the fall of their queen. They have already created an ambassador station for both ponies and changelings. It was your friend, Starlight?
She shrugged at the name.
Whatever the other purple unicorn name is, she helped create the bond with them. She defeated the queen along with the Chimera.
That was real shock value for him. Never in a million years would he have thought that the changelings would be allies to the ponies, especially since the invasion at Canterlot back then. It also seems odd that it was Starlight who defeated Chrysalis. Truly a lot has changed.
So, if I bring you over, I have to let Twilight and the princesses know that you're all coming?
It would be best, son,
Elianza answered.
As is, the princesses have months at stating their intentions. We have no way to retaliate if push comes to shove, especially with the Chimera and changelings on their side.
Spike somewhat waved off the mention of Discord.
Discord... that's the name of the Chimera you're talking about. I wouldn't really worry about him. When it comes down to it, he's a real big softie when you can get to know him. Before coming here, me and another pony named Big Mac, we used to play with him in Ogres and Oubliettes together on Guys' Night. I don't know much about the changelings, but I'm sure that everything is just a precaution. At worst, they just really want me back.
They all looked at him as if he had grown another head. Playing with the Chaos Chimera. With no ill intentions. Torch shook his head trying to make sense of it, but he just moved on to another question. Anyway, tell us, Spike, what is the relationship between you and the princesses? And clearly you have some sort of affliction to them if they have been demanding your return and throwing threats at us. Spike furrowed his brow a little.
I thought Ember told you. I was adopted by Twilight.
And the Princess of the Sun herself?
Xynthia curiously asked.
Surely, you mean a lot to us, but to her? No real leader would go to a war or conflict with another nation unless that leader's children or blood relatives were on the line.
A tense shudder went through the room, and even Ember forgot about it until now, but Twilight had stated that she adopted Spike into her family until later on, but who was it that they raised him since he hatched? Even Twilight's pony mother had no knowledge on dragons, so the only one that could possibly raise him was...
Well,
he began lightly, not seeing their tension.
I was hatched by Twilight, but she was a filly at the time, so she couldn't raise me herself. In truth, I was raised by Princess Celestia. I was her officially adopted son.
He paused.
I technically am still her adopted son, and since I am her son, and I guess Twilight's brother too, I guess that would make me a prince, but
The color drained from his mother's. Torch looked shocked, and Ember was filled with fear. In no effort to restrain herself, she practically boomed at him.
You're Prince of Equestria?
Her voice matched with her ferociousness, and her father's. Spike's ears rang, forcing him to move away from Ember. That in itself sent an all too familiar feeling between the two, something that they hadn't experienced since before the trial. There was no feedback, but the feeling of being separated was there. It was something that Ember never wanted to experience again. She instantly regretted yelling at him, trying to regain their bond and quickly trying to move towards him.
Spike! I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Spike just shook his head, trying to get the ringing to stop before giving a small, pained smile at her.
Hey, it's okay. I should have mentioned it before, but I didn't think that it was gonna be that important.
It is more important than you know, Spike.
Elianza stated loudly.
You, being the son of the Princess of Equestria, has been causing severe consequences, not just by coming here, but also falling into a coma.
But all of that wasn't... Well, it wasn't even my choice.
He almost yelled back, trying to defend everyone's action.
It was my choice that I came here.
He looked back to Ember.
I will say everything has been on me, all of it. None of you or any dragon should have to suffer because of the accidents that led to my injury. I can write to Twilight and just clear everything up.
He paused and looked around the cave, then refocused on Ember.
Where is the book that I could send Twilight with notes and messages quickly?
I have them in my cave.
Ember answered, though she hesitated lightly.
I haven't checked on it that last month, so maybe there are messages that I haven't seen.
Spike nodded.
That's okay. I'll send this one back to Twilight that I am awake, but I'll have to talk with her through the book. You go get it, and at once I'll start talking with her. I can also send a message to Princess Celestia to clear out that patrol.
Ember nodded and moved away, motioning for her horde.
I will, and hopefully we can resolve this quickly.
The trio of dragons quickly made their way out of the cave and took off in flight. Torch meanwhile grumbled lightly, and that was saying something as he shook his giant head. You should have mentioned this when you got here, that you were royalty. Spike looked up at the giant, towering form of the former Dragon Lord.
I am not royalty, though. I have no title, no influence, not even a checkings account from Celestia. In truth, she adopted me so I can be raised by a pony and not be declared as a pet or something.
He then realized what he said, and he quickly retracted his statement.
I mean, not that ponies have pet dragons and, you know...
That is too close to what the true assumptions were.
Cynthia nearly spat, a low growl vibrating from her throat.
Your history, along with what Ember had told during your coma state, you were practically their pet, or toy.
No, I wasn't.
He practically yelled back at his mother. Cynthia's head jerked back in surprise at his loud voice. His glare was directed towards her, not waning at all of her height, or the sheer fact that this was his mother he was yelling at. Torch and Elianza were caught off guard by his sudden outburst.
They never treated me like a pet. They treated me like family, and you have no right to say that!
Elianza had seen all of his memories, his past, his actions, and what each and every encounter with him had been. Some of them are not clear as he thought they were.
Son, I have seen your memories,
spoke Elianza, trying to defuse the heated situation.
From the few instances, they have treated you as family, but other times?
She trailed off. Spike looked up to her, seeing that saddened look in her eyes. He couldn't deny it.
There are instances where you were put in danger. For one so young, you had instances where they could have killed you, or the minor raised you incorrectly.
Spike huffed loudly, allowing smoke to leave his nose.
I chose to go on most of those adventures, even if what would happen. Also, of course they would raise me differently. How could they know how to raise a dragon if they could never study them?
He waved to them all.
How could they know how to raise me when dragons didn't want anything to do with ponies? That ponies were too afraid of dragons that they didn't want to ask one in fear of getting eaten.
The fear is there for a reason, Spike, Torch answered immediately, his form shifting to a more stern approach. As it is now, your adopted mother had a dragon egg. Once she received it, or found it, with no information, as far as we can tell, no eggs have been reported missing in centuries, outside of... He stopped as he looked like he was visibly struck. Elianza and Cynthia looked at him, difficulty etching into his face. He shook his head and looked away, a frown settling upon his face.
Outside of what?
Asked Spike, watching the former Dragon Lord trying to find his words once more. Elianza lowered her head and spoke low with him.
Torch's mate, Sapphira, was born in a clutch of two. One was taken and was never seen again. Ponies were the assumed culprit for centuries.
She gave a quick glance to Torch and saw him nod, though he gave no indication that he would speak on. She leveled her head back up and looked at Spike.
We keep the fear in ponies and other creatures because we do have our weaknesses, Spike. The trials themselves could be used to exploit our weaknesses.
She looked towards her mate, whom continued on for her.
You are already aware of them.
Cynthia huffed lightly, showing the scar on her leg that he had created. Then, she lightly lifted her neck where he held her life in his claws before.
These, Spike, are the weaknesses of dragons. The trials have shown more to the world than any other creature could see if they were not looking closely. If our greed was forced to come out, could we be blindly set on an innocent town of ponies and creatures? If they find that certain materials or minerals could destroy scales, would others not weaponize them? The exposure in between scale that you exploited, have others not found them yet? Most, if not a lot of dragons don't have strong minds. What is to say that they cannot be controlled?
She hesitated but leaned down to brush against him. He didn't fight it, in fact he leaned in, almost purring at her gentle caress before she pulled back.
Our hatchlings, Spike,
She said softly.
our hearts and souls are in the eggs. They are vulnerable. They are vulnerable, and they are the greatest weakness that we can ever have. I dare not imagine the difficulty that you endured as an egg to be amongst ponies, but I know that we stay to ourselves because we dare not admit it, but we are just as frail, just as sickly, and just as likely to be killed if we are not strong.
She lifted her head back up.
What has happened to you?
Continued Elianza, nearing him as well.
We wish to find out. Regardless of what the ponies and the princesses think of you, we fear that their neglect in some,
She quickly emphasized on some,
of their ways of raising may have been prevented, or in some cases, discovered.
But I'm me because of them.
He pointed a claw to himself.
I am the nice dragon you all know because of them. Sure, they're with flaws and all that, but I am here because of them. If ponies weren't nice or careful, who is to say that I would be here? If Princess Celestia wasn't nice to take care of my egg, would I even be alive now?
Perhaps.
Answered the Black Dragoness.
Perhaps she raised you as a sort of diplomat for species, the peace between dragons and ponies. She kept your egg and your life safe, sure, but she raised you with kindness, not seen in dragons normally.
And is that a bad thing?
He asked, confused at his mother's words.
Far from it.
She shook her head, motioning at Torch.
Dragons like him come far and new. Natural kindness or genuine intelligence, that speaks volumes. His case literally.
Cynthia chuckled with a snort. Amusement danced in her features as well as Spike's. Torch snorted with a huff, but a glint of merit sparkled in his eyes.
But what you also must realize is that you were meant to be a diplomat, a bridge between two species, born and raised to help keep that relationship stable.
But none of you knew I existed until I stepped foot onto the Dragonlands,
He stated, somewhat vexed.
How could I be born to be a diplomat if none of you knew who I was? Again, you said that no eggs have been reported missing since.
He gave a glance to Torch before continuing on.
And not to mention that Princess Celestia didn't even know about my egg.
That we know of.
Cut in Cynthia, though she was tamer with her speech at the mention of ponies.
I know that it may be difficult to believe it, son, but chances are your pony princesses have secrets or lies that they have not told their subjects. Just as we are as old, if not older than her, she has thousands of years to hold in any information she did not want the masses to know.
She paused.
Or where you came from either.
He frowned lightly, wanting to defend his adopted mother's name, but it wasn't only until after Twilight left to Ponyville that he did also learn that she was destined to become something she was not told of. As is, Celestia had many secrets, and it was true that she kept a few to herself for the safety of others. So did that include those around him?